And we are super excited today to have Anna Gettman, one of our fantastic escrow officers, leading us on this class. So Anna, can you just take a minute to tell them about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I have been doing this for approximately 24 years, and I started as a receptionist and worked my way up. I actually was in title for a few years, so I got title background along with being an escrow officer. I come from a small town, South County, Parlier, if anybody knows about it. And I was in the military for 4 years and then decided it was time for me to not be in the military. But I found myself in the real estate industry and I love what I do.
All right, we're going to ask if everyone can just mute themselves to make sure no background noise gets in the mix. And I am going to share my screen and we'll get going.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Jennifer, are you going to be watching my chat by any chance?
We'll keep an eye on it and feed you questions. How about that?
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, new agent boot camp, train to go the distance.
So everybody knows that every transaction has a preliminary title report. This preliminary title report is basically your map of your transaction. It's the, the heart and gold of what's gonna, what's gonna make your transaction, what is it gonna look like. You can have a smooth escrow and still have a prelim that has a ton of stuff on it. The magic key is to look at that prelim, familiarize yourself with that prelim, get to know your prelim, ask questions about your prelim. And even if you have a ton of items to be dealt with on your prelim, if you familiarize yourself, communicate with your escrow team, you still will have a successful closing. So you know what? That's why you guys are here. And I give everybody kudos for being here because this is truly the most important thing to be able to learn about in being a real estate agent. Okay. Like I said, you might have a ton of items on your prelim, whether they're abstract judgments or SI requirements or HERO or delinquent taxes. They could be your little landmines, but not necessarily. If you get that prelim, look at it, ask questions, we can tackle it, everything on that prelim together. So the two types of title policies that is issued in escrow. So if you have a lender or finance transaction, that's where the second policy comes in. But your first policy is going to be your owner's title policy. That title policy is issued to cover the new owner. Not the current owner, the new owner, because the current owner received their owner's title policy when they purchased the property. And so the owner's policy is usually issued in the amount of the real estate purchase. So the owner's policy is based on the sales price. Even if you have a transaction, that has a low purchase price, but the property is valued at a higher price. For example, if a family member is selling to another family member, it's not based on the appraised value. It's based on the sales price. Okay, and it's a one-time purchase, one-time fee. It's not adoptable. It doesn't go, from owner to owner. You purchase it every single time that there is a purchase transaction for that owner, and again, it's a one-time cost. And so I did cover that it protects the buyer, not the seller. In case what it does is the buyer is covered for any possible people that say that they have a claim to that property, whether it's money owed or work done on the property. It covers various things. So that owner is protected for anybody coming back and saying that the previous owner owes them money. Okay, just a kind of quick note, anything that has, if it was an item that was recorded, it's going to be protected under that policy. Any unrecorded debt, liens, it's not protected because we don't know about them. We only know about items that are recorded and of record. Okay.
Anna,
So
Beth is asking if you can go, if an escrow officer will review the prelim with the agent if they have questions.
absolutely. The beauty of our company is our title department sends that preliminary title report directly to the escrow officer at the same time as all the parties involved in the escrow. So both agents are receiving it the exact same time that the escrow officer is receiving it, and any lenders that information that was provided to escrow is getting that preliminary title report. So if you get that and you have questions or you just want to review it, pick up the phone, call your escrow officer. We're happy over here at Chicago Title to go over that preliminary title report, whether it's lengthy or it's a super easy one. Always happy to go over that. So yes, Beth, not a problem. Okay, I don't know if I covered the lender's policy real quick, but just so you know, that policy is issued to the financial institution. I did want to say one thing, just to kind of put that out there and keep a mental note. The lender's policy is issued to a institutional financial institution like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, anything that is an institutional bank. If you have a private lender, a hard money lender, for whatever matter, for however it is, they do not qualify for that lender's title policy. But that does not mean that they're not going to get a insurance policy. They will get an insurance policy. It's just not a lender's title policy. They're going to receive a CLTA joint protection policy. And it's just a piggyback of that owner's policy that protects their beneficial interests. So I kind of just wanted to go over that real quick, just to let you know that in case you have a transaction with a private lender, a seller carryback, hard money, any of that sort, they too can get a lender's title policy. It's just not going to be the same as an institution. Okay. Those matters shown in the report are as follows. Okay. So the estate of interest is covered. So everybody, if you look at your prelim and you see in the first page, most 9 times out of 10, you're going to see fee simple, meaning it's owned. It's not leased. You'll see if you see leasehold, that means there is a leasehold. I don't want to open that, can of worms. I just want you to be aware of the fact that if it says fee, it's going to be owned. If it's a leasehold, there is a leasehold on the property. Condominiums, you will see fee simple or fee, but also you'll see something that says a condominium or some of that sort. And that's because they have a common area that's kind of owned by the entire complex type situation, a HOA. But for the most part, it's going to be fee simple. Let's see, owner of estate and interest, parcel of land involved, exceptions, liens, and encumbrances and other risks which will not be insured against if a title policy is issued. That kind of falls on the part where I was discussing any unrecorded liens and unrecorded debt. So if there is a handshake type of situation deal where a seller borrows money from someone and they don't record a deed of trust, there's no way for us knowing that. There's no way for us to insure against that. It has to be recorded. Also, if on a commercial piece of property, if there's no recorded leases, there's no way for us to know. We have to count on the actual seller to disclose those type of situations. The other requirements and provisions which are reflected as notes in the preliminary title report, which are removed if and when a title policy is issued. That note section is basically title communicating to escrow. However, the lenders really do use a few things off that note section, i.e. what type of property it is, if it's a single family residence, if it's a condominium or a planned unit development known as a PUD. So that will reflect on the note section to escrow. And then also what the lenders do use on that, they typically ask for a 24-month chain of title. And what that means is they want to know what's happened in the last 24 months, what kind of transaction, any transfers, interfamily transfers for whatever that, if that's the case. And the reason why is lenders have requirements for like a 90-day flip rule type situation. And I'm sure if you don't know what that is, you will hear about, throughout your transactions, you're gonna come across that. And so that section will tell anybody that's interested what type of transfers have happened, whether they're interfamily or from one person to another, and it'll give you that deed information. So the note section is good to read, but it's basically information from title to escrow and or lenders for their requirements. Okay. And the assessor's map, parcel map. This is it's at the end of your preliminary title report. And so it's the recorded map with the county. And the example I like to use that people find interesting is, it gives you a nice little linear snapshot of the boundaries of the property, where it's located as far as the neighborhood is concerned. If there's any easements, it's going to have, dotted line out easements. And so you can typically look at that map and locate your property in question. The one thing I do like to mention is, for instance, if you have a transaction that is on Smith Avenue and your contract says Smith Street, you can always go to your assessor's parcel map, because it's of record. It's a map that gets recorded. That is like the be all, say all, end all. If that map says Street Avenue and your contract says, Smith Avenue, and your contract says Smith Street, it's going to be Avenue. And the reason why I say it's important is if you have a finance transaction, the appraisal needs to match the prelim, and vice versa. Prelim needs to match the appraisal. And you're going to come, and it's not a huge deal. It's a little bit of a speed bump, and not really a speed bump. But if there's differing street names from the appraisal and the prelim, that map is going to be what each prelim and the appraisal needs to say. So if it says Avenue and we have the prelim as Avenue, but the appraisal has street, the lender is going to have to get the appraisal to be corrected, because it has to match. But if you find yourself in that situation where they said, oh, they need to correct the prelim, or they need to correct, just look at the map and see what it says, and that's what it's going to be. Okay. Our first page just kind of goes over, like, the company that's issuing the preliminary title report, and it talks about our liability and the assumption of, the liability of before issuing our title policy. So it's our title commitment to you, saying this is what the property contains. We are going to take care of the exceptions that need to be taken care of to be, bring any liens current, or I'm sorry, taxes current, and pay off any voluntary liens. Taxes are involuntary, and notes and deeds of trust are voluntary, along with, HERO and all that stuff, but I'll go into that a little bit later. And then your title policy is the policy that's issued to you at the end of the transaction to the owner and to the lender, without some of those exceptions that we are required and have a fiduciary duty to take care of within the escrow. The overview of the preliminary title report. This is now what I've been speaking about is now kind of going to make sense. So I just kind of quickly went over what we're going to talk about. Now you get to see what I'm talking about. So the property, I want you to pay attention to your preliminary title report where it says property address. Now you are never, ever, ever going to see a zip code here, because we do not insure zip codes. For the simple fact is they change. They can change. all the time. And so, and depending on the boundaries and where the property's at, so you'll never ever see a zip code here. But I do want you to pay attention to this section because that address must match. Like I said, match your contract, match, you know, as soon as the appraisal comes out, it must match. It could be as little, the detail can be so little and you may think insignificant, but see, for example, how this has the West is abbreviated and maybe the other documents are not abbreviated. Lenders are going to want it to match exactly. So we may have W, and not to say that we're the right and we're the be all end all. That map is a be all end all, you know, but sometimes things are entered into the database and the prelim pulls in it in whatever we enter, and sometimes it should say West spelled out. So property address is a very good thing to pay attention to when you get your preliminary title report. Your effective date below that is going to be your plant date. And what that means is we search all the properties according to the, you know, recording dates and so on and so forth, but we're not in real time. And it's impossible. No title company is in real time because of the fact that we are at the mercy of the county recorder's office and the inputting of the data every day, all day that things record. We are about 2 weeks behind the, you know, real time. So that effective date is stating that we have searched this property, and as of this date, what this preliminary title report contains is what is on record to this date. Okay, so sometimes people get their prelim and they're like, oh my gosh, my prelim is old. It's like 2 weeks old. It's like, no, that's our plant date. That's telling us we have searched the property and we are good until this date. Now, when we go in and close, you may see, or you may hear your escrow officer saying, you know, okay, I'm going to date down the, you know, we have to date down the property before we release for recording. And dating down means that we're trying to recoup that time from the time that we issued that prelim till the time that we're closing. We've got to check, make sure nobody walked into the recorder's office and recorded an abstracted judgment or just a miscellaneous lien or something for that sort. We've got to make sure, because we're ensuring the new buyer and the new lender that, hey, we've checked this out, we're good to go. So you're going to hear that term towards the end of closing at recording, we're as soon as the date down is clear, we're going to release the file. And that is why there's a misconception where, and I'm going to go over this a little bit later, but I just kind of want to throw it out there real quick, where the time that we get funded to the time that we actually release recording, there is a little bit of time. And somebody asked me once, like, why was it like an hour or so from the time that you got funded to you actually released it? Well, I actually released it when it got funded, but it didn't technically get released until like an hour later, because title's got to go through and date down that property and make sure we're good to go. So anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to move on. The next section is what the property, this particular property, what it qualifies for. The two title policies. Again, you have your owner's Alta homeowners policy of title insurance, and that's the highest policy that you could possibly get, and it covers a ton. I'm not going to go into what it covers. At the end of every preliminary title report, there's several pages that talks about these type of policies and what they cover and what they don't cover. Okay, and then this one qualifies for the Alta loan policy 2006. So the interest in the estate or interest in the land, this is what we were talking about earlier, the fee. So this is owned property. If it was a leasehold, it would say leasehold there, but if it was a condo, it'd say fee, and then under the fee would be condominium, just to kind of let you know. And then not all don't get me wrong, not all condominiums have the fee and condominium. It all depends on the specific plan. And then this, I can't stress, the next section, I can't stress enough to please pay attention to this. It's the vesting. It's who we are saying to you, who we are finding of record is the legal owner of the property. And the reason why I want to stress this, that this is, if you don't look at the entire prelim, please at least just look at this section, because it'll it'll make your escrow run a whole lot smoother when escrow's not finding out in, day 15 that there's a deceased person of record, or day 15 the property's in a trust and all trustees are deceased. So if you don't do anything at all, just at least do this. Look at the prelim, see who owns the property, and those are the people that sign your listing agreement, sign the contract. If that's the case, you're good to go. If we're showing any kind of deviation, an additional seller, or we're showing it in a trust and you're dealing with just one seller and they said nothing about a trust. So that's why I said this is super important, because then we can tackle those vesting issues right at the beginning. We can ask the questions. We can find out, if there's somebody that's deceased on title, we need to get a certified copy of a death certificate. If it's in a trust, we need a copy of that trust, just so we know who's signing for the property has the right and power to sign for the property. So that's where your vesting is going to be. Make sure you pay attention. Make sure it matches who signed the listing agreement and who signed that purchase contract. Okay. The next second section is your legal description. It is the described section of the property. It's how the county has located that property and is described. Your more lengthy legal description is going to be attached to this page. It'll be following this page and it'll say see attached for your legal description. But right here, the lenders pay attention to this section because of course they have to make sure that everything matches on their records. But this section is your legal section. The one thing I do want to point out to you is the assessor's parcel number, the APN. Make sure that APN matches your contract and your contract's not selling another piece of property next door. So just want to point that out. We've had it times where we enter our order screen, the property address, it pulls up an APN. That APN is not matching. So you want to make sure, because guess what? In a battle of who, what, when, where, it's going to go to that APN. The address is secondary. So APNs are very important. Take a look at that. Make sure that APN matches your contract. We're going to do the same, but it's just a good idea that you do that yourself and follow up yourself. So, oh, I just went through all of this, Jennifer. I did skip over the order number. Your escrow number is going to be the right of the prelim. Your title number is going to be the left of your prelim. Your title number will be different if you are dealing with a property in a county outside of Fresno. And that's not uncommon. We have escrows in Fresno where we're dealing with Madera County, Kings County, Tulare County, even as far as Kern. Chicago Title can handle escrows all through the state of California because we're licensed in the state of California. We cannot handle escrows outside of out of California because our license is basically for California. But there's Chicago Titles nationwide, but for our office is what I'm speaking of. I did go over the date. I went over the homeowner's title insurance, the fee, and the vesting and legal description. Okay, and then we went over that as well. Okay, so I apologize if I'm going too fast. If I'm going too fast, please let chat know. Can Anna slow down? Because I have been known, I'm a speed talker, but I try to be very detailed. So let's see here. Matters of record, your exceptions. And so for the preliminary title report, in your exceptions section, your government liens are going to come first. I'm not talking about federal tax liens. I'm not talking about state tax liens. I'm talking about government liens, property taxes, supplemental property taxes. Those are always going to appear first no matter what, because they are technically in a first position. And so that's why you're going to see taxes come first every single time in your preliminary title report. Depending on the time of the year, you may or may not see this as your first exception. And the reason why is it all depends on what time of year we fall in when we're handling your escrow. Now this right now, it says property taxes are for future for 1920. Now, if we were in, that particular time of the year, that's why, for example, if we're in August of that particular year, those tax bills are not issued yet, even though we're in the tax installment period. And if you want if you want like a snapshot of what the taxes look like and, first and second installment, our sales team has wonderful handouts that they can give you if you're interested in that. And I suggest you reach out to them because it's good to have. When you have questions from your clients asking about taxes, it's good to have that on with you on your desktop, so you can understand the tax period. So please reach out to your sales rep and ask for that, because I love it. I use it when I train new employees for, as escrow, because it helps people understand what they're looking at when they're talking about taxes. So that'll always be there at the beginning saying, this property has an exception for property taxes. And so just know the year passes by, you still are responsible for taxes. The next section will be the actual taxes that are currently due in whatever tax year we are at. So your first installment is from July 1 to December 30th of that particular year. Your second installment is from January 1 to June 30th of the following year. So your tax years are split. Your whole tax year is split into 2 different years. And that's just the way it's always been. So we're going to tell you here in this section if the taxes are due or paid or due and delinquent. Let me say one thing. There's a misconception out there that taxes are due December 10th and April 10th, and that is not true. They are delinquent after December 10th and delinquent after April 10th. Technically, they are due November 1 and February 1. So that is that little tidbit for you. The next section will be any delinquent taxes, supplemental taxes, past year's taxes. If the property goes past 5 years, you may see of unpaid taxes, you may see on here that the property is possibly up for tax sale. And that has to be delinquent past 5 years. So, I don't know if anybody catches our Title Tip Tuesday with Robin and myself. We just recently went over taxes, and we just recently went over supplemental taxes. I do want to mention, if you are representing a buyer in a new construction transaction, please help your buyers understand that they will be receiving a supplemental tax bill for the value of their new home, because the taxes on our prelim are based on the value of the property, and the value of the property is really low because the current taxes are just based on bare land. So just kind of keep that on the back of your head. Same thing if you're representing a buyer with a flipped property, because the sellers that are flipping the property, they most likely own the property for just maybe a handful of months or less than 6 months, and the tax office hasn't had a chance to catch up from their purchase to your buyer's purchase. Just pay attention to that tax bill on the top right-hand corner of when those supplemental tax bills are being assessed, and if they belong to your buyer or if they belong to the seller. And so the next thing is Melrose. It shows the properties within the district of Melrose taxes, which are included in the annual tax bill. So if you get a tax bill that's printed out and you see Melrose on the prelim, if you see the tax bill, it'll have a description of what that Melrose is and the amount on there. It's separated because it's within the tax amount, but if you want to know what it is or the exact amount, it is in the tax roll. If you want to see that, we're happy to provide that. It is it's out there for the public. We can pull the tax roll for you and email it to you, and then you can see that. It also states that these can be stripped from the taxes and foreclosed upon after the failure to pay said taxes. This is a big thing. I particularly know that there is a subdivision in Chowchilla that this has happened, where they've stripped these and the properties have gone to tax sale, and then the new owners are very surprised that they bought a tax sale property and they're still taxes owing, because guess what? They were stripped from the tax bill, meaning they applied for those amounts to be removed before the tax office sold the property to the public. Your next section is going to be your CC&Rs, which stands for Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. This is basically telling you what you can and cannot do on your property, depending on the location of the property and the type of property. There's homeowners associations that have much more restrictive restrictions. And so they could be as lengthy as 300 pages. They can be 25 pages. We have hyperlinked preliminary title reports. So you're going to see a little blue where the recording information is. Recording information is to pull that document up and take a look at the CC&Rs. There's some there's some old CC&Rs that have some unpleasant language, but unfortunately when documents are recorded, you can't unrecord something. So we do disclose that, hey, the CC&Rs may have some unfavorable language in it. So just so you know. On to the next section, please. Easements. This is where it's going to fall any public utilities, any landscape easements, any access easements. This is where you're going to find them. If you're dealing with a rural property, and you have a question about access to your particular property you're dealing with, and you notice that when you were showing the property or listing the property, the access was through a neighboring property, it's best that you pay attention to the preliminary title report and make sure that the property is not landlocked and that there is an access easement. We can go, if anybody has any more questions about that, I'm happy to go over that, but it's all on a case-by-case basis. So next section is voluntary liens. Between your easements and your voluntary liens, your normal voluntary liens, like a loan mortgage, you're going to see you might see something that's called an assessment contractual. This preliminary title report does not have an example of it, but I need to make sure that you are aware that your prelims might have something of that sort in between easements and the voluntary liens. And what that is your hero loans, your PACE loans. Again, those are case-by-case basis. I'm happy to sit with anybody to go into detail with those, but please be sure. If you see solar panels on there, we'll go over solar in just about 2 minutes. But if you see solar panels on there, just kind of take a look, make sure that they're not financed through Hero or whatever the case may be. Also ask that question to your sellers. Did you take a PACE or Hero loan out? Voluntarily.
And I would also add that if they see 2 loans, but their seller only told them there was one, to take a breath and let's look at it, because it might change any profitability from the sale that they discussed with their client.
Absolutely. Great point, Jennifer. Beat me to the punch. Thank you very much. Yes, if there is more than one lien showing on our preliminary title report and they only told you about one, that's going to change your bottom line. That net sheet that you did for them at the listing appointment is going to change. So this is where you're going to find your voluntary liens. I do want to mention, if you see a old deed of trust here back in from 1988, we might have a little bit of a challenge, not a problem, a challenge, and we might have to take a little bit longer to research that and try to get that taken care of, because as we all heard or lived through the market of 2007, 2009, a lot of banks have gone out of business, and if it was an older loan and that bank is no longer there to collect the reconveyance, it's going to take us a little bit longer to get it done, but we will get it done. The next section is your solar. You're going to see 2 items. Oftentimes, it's very rare that you only see 1 item on the preliminary title report addressing solar, but this is where you're going to see the solar section, or the solar. The section is going to be where your solar, and I can't express this enough, that if the seller tells you that the solar is owned, that's fine. But there's a misconception that if they take a personal loan out with a credit union for whatever that may be, it technically is not owned. They think that since they didn't buy it direct, they didn't finance it through the solar company, that it's owned. That has to be taken care of. Solar can be transferred. We just have to do take the proper steps. And I want to emphasize this. We do contact the solar company. We request the documents that are required for escrow and title to have to close a transaction for a property that has solar. But please keep in mind, the solar company will not, they will talk to us, but they only talk to us after the process of the transfer is complete. It is the seller and the buyer's responsibility to go through the steps with the solar company to get that transfer started and completed. And that is to include, but not limited to, the buyer qualifying credit-wise with that solar company. So please don't sit there and think, oh, escrow is going to handle it. Yes, we have a duty that we need to make sure we do to get the recordable documents to transfer that solar. But please know that it's the buyer and seller's responsibility to have that process started and completed. But this is a section where you see is the agreement and any UCC financing statement that finances that solar, whether it's leased, PPO, anything. You're always going to see this here. Okay.
There's a little confusion on the owned solar as far as saying if you financed it with a credit union, you don't own it. People just, we had a couple questions for clarification on that.
Okay, so what happens is the seller will go, owner of the property will go and contract with a solar company, and they don't like the financing terms that the solar company has. So and then often the solar company will give them two separate prices, a finance price and an outright price. There are credit unions out there that offer solar personal, well, they're not really personal loans, but they're advertised to the homeowner as personal loans, but they're specifically for solar purchases. So in this section, you'll see item that the solar company has placed because they went into contract or recorded on there, and then you'll see a UCC financing that they financed it. Now there are prelims, you'll only see a UCC financing statement and no solar agreement. And what I was just talking about, that a homeowner didn't like the financing terms from the solar, so they went ahead and contacted a credit union and got a solar loan and used that money to pay the solar company for the solar system. So in this case that you're looking at, the solar company provided the financing through their financing company. Another prelim, you will see where they think that they own it, but they really don't. That number 10 will not be on your prelim, only number 11, because the credit union did not file a deed of trust or did not record a deed of trust, but they only filed a financing statement. It's still a recordable loan lien. So I hope I cleared that up. If not, I can go into further detail.
And we just had one quick question that from Derek Rankin, does the buyer need to qualify on owned solar? But I'm not sure that I'm interpreting that right.
If it's owned outright and there's no financing statement and there's nothing, if it's owned, you're not going to see anything about solar on our preliminary title report. You will not see. The only time you'll see something on our preliminary title report, if it's a purchase power agreement, or if it's a leased solar system, or it's a financed solar system. So those are the only time that you will see that. So in an owned, the buyer will not have to qualify for anything. They're buying that property with solar. It's just like if you're buying a property with a hot tub, you know, affixed to the backyard. You know, it comes with the property. Okay. Did I answer all the questions in chat, Jen?
I think so.
Okay. The next section is just trust vesting. I do want to make just a mental note that if there's a SI requirement, sometimes it'll show before this section and or after this section, and sometimes it'll show in our notes. But just know that if there's a statement of information that's required for any party involved in the transaction, it'll show up on this part of the preliminary title report. But for this purpose, for the trust vesting, if the property is held in a trust, as we saw on the first page that it was, we are required to collect a trust certification, which we provide for the sellers to sign, fill out, and have notarized at the signing. And or in addition to that, we will require a copy of the trust. Now, please don't worry that we're going to ask for the 100 pages of the trust. We do not care. It's none of our business what that entire trust says. We just ask for the portion of the trust that talks about who the trustees are, how the trust is named, and what the powers of the trustees are, and any successor trustees, co-trustees for that matter. So typically we're going to ask for about 10 pages direct from the seller. So just keep that in mind and let your sellers know properties in a trust, the title company is going to require, you know, a few pages from your trust. Okay. Next section. This is a note section that I talked about earlier. It just kind of it's telling title. This is our title to escrow communication page. Title's telling us what we need to be aware of in this particular transaction. Items are note 5 and note 7 are the ones that as lenders and are going to be interested in this, and as you know, agents, you should be too. Note 5 we'll talk about any transfers that has happened in the last 24 months, and note 7 is going to tell you what the property, if it's a single family, if it's prime unit development, commercial, industrial, if it's condominium. So that is where it's going to be on this section. A lot of them, like I said, is just communication from title to escrow on this. So those are the only 2 items that you probably should or want to pay attention to. I should make a note that 5 and 7 do differ, but those are the numbers because every property has different amount of notes. So it's not always going to be 5 and 7, but for example, you can refer back to the language of 5 and 7 and compare that to your current preliminary title report.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. Can you please explain the affidavit of uninsured deed?
Okay, the uninsured deed affidavit is required if there is a deed that has been executed and recorded within 2 years of the transaction. And because a deed was executed and recorded and was uninsured, meaning it didn't go through title and escrow, there was no insurance issued for the transfer of that deed, we have to make sure that the parties involved in that deed intended to transfer the property in the way they did, okay? Because it wasn't insured and we didn't have an opportunity to search the property or search the names that were involved, we need to go back and say, here's an affidavit, this is what we're finding. Was this your intention? It does have to be signed and notarized by a one of our contracted notaries, are approved notaries. And the reason why we have to do that is because we have to ensure that buyer that no one is going to come back from that technically that private transaction and have any kind of claim on that property. So that it has to be done for the protection of the new buyer.
And then Harpreet said, I got a preliminary title report yesterday from Chicago Title, but I can't see anything about solar here. And the property has solar. Where else can I find it? What can I do?
Okay, if you're representing the buyer you might have to have a conversation with that listing agent, and so they can find out directly from the seller. It sounds to me that it's possibly owned, meaning they just paid the money outright for that solar system. So if there's nothing recorded, there's no way of us knowing. But at the same time, we are all human, and it may have been missed. So just send a message to that escrow officer and say, there's solar on the property. Can you just double check that there's no recordable items pertaining to solar? And then they can just double check that for you. And then if the answer is no, then just circle back to that other agent to have a conversation to confirm that the solar is owned. Okay. And then this is the map that we spoke about, and it's recordable. It's a recorded document. So this is the be all end all say all. So whatever the street names are on here, and the measurements and dimensions and all that good stuff, this is what is of record. So for example, it says Evergreen Drive, and there is some misconception that it's Avenue or Drive is spelled out. This is where you're going to reference on what the actual street name is. If it's a PUD or a condominium, it will again confirm here that it's a planned unit development, or a standalone condominium, or a altogether condominium. And so this is your parcel, recorded assessor's parcel map, and the description, and you'll always have an arrow showing the property in question. Okay.
We're just going to skip that part
Okay.
because we have a lot of escrow stuff to cover. So
yeah,
we'll jump through the rest of this.
So I'm going to kind of skip through if I mentioned the scenario already, because I feel like I've mentioned a couple of scenarios. But some of these things that we have listed is very important. For example, false impersonation of the true owner of the property goes along with the vesting. If you're signing a seller at a listing agreement, and say you pull the prelim. I'm not listing agreement. You signed a seller at the listing agreement. You got the listing agreement signed. Then you pulled the prelim, and there's not something matching. I'm not saying that this is the case, but it could be where there's someone impersonating an actual owner of the property. Forged deeds, releases, and/or wills. The forged deeds goes along with that uninsured affidavit. This is why we get that, because some people sign deeds for themselves or for other people and get them recorded. So this is why we do these type of things, because we need to insure the new buyer and make sure that they're getting good title insurance. Undisclosed missing errors. This is all vesting, and it's just, if you read your vesting portion, you're going to catch a lot of these up front. Power attorneys, I just want to kind of take note on that. If they're older than 2 years, most likely they're not going to be something that any title company is going to accept, because a power of attorney past 2 years is difficult to rely on. And then mistakes in recording legal documents. This does happen. Legal description is tweaked a little bit, or missing a letter, missing a number. It happens. Misinterpretation of wills. We do not transfer property based on a will, but a will can be used to help in your probate situation. I'm not going to open that can of worms, but I'm happy to talk about probate that anybody's interested in. And deeds by minors. I recently had something of this sort. A son and a father have the same last name with the exception of a middle name. They put the attorney erroneously, for whatever reason, was handling the estate and put the vesting as the son, and he is 12 years old. So underage minor cannot hold title. They have to be over 18. And next slide, please.
We did get a question asking if we've seen any issues with title theft.
I personally, not recently, but I personally had, I was called by the DA unknowingly. I notarized somebody that did not own the property. They had a fake ID, which was really good. She was deeding, I think the one that I did was property number 7. It was years ago, but it does happen. It does happen. So what happens in escrow, we're at the center. We have various people that we deal with on a daily basis on every single escrow, because every escrow is different. Not every escrow is finance. Not every escrow is cash. So it's the one thing that I want to stress is communication and contact information. We act upon instruction, but we can only act upon instruction if we're given all the information. So if you know of anything that you think that we need to know, scenario, situations with sellers and buyers, sensitive situations, please, because of the fact that we deal with so many people in one single transaction, communication and information will ensure a smooth escrow. But this just kind of goes over, it kind of puts into perspective how many people an escrow unit, deals with on a daily basis. So communication, complete information, set realistic expectations with your clients, especially in this market. It's taking a little bit longer to get things because it's just so, I don't like to use the word busy, but there's a lot of activity. Let's just say that instead of being busy. There's a lot of activity. So anywhere between prelims and demands and documentation and, everything is taking a little bit longer because of the abundance of activity. I like that instead of saying busy. The abundance of activity that is going on right now. And it's like we are at the escrow is at the mercy of these third parties. And we are working hard for you. It's just sometimes our hands are tied. So set those realistic expectations with your clients, and if they know what to expect, no one's going to be upset, and you're going to have a happy, smooth, closed escrow. Same thing with being patient and being flexible, and grace. Grace will get you a long way, get you very far. So just know we're all working hard for you. Okay, next slide. This is super important. Legible contract, fully executed, no signatures missing, as much information.
I have to go back. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. You're okay.
And go back.
Just a good information. I mean, full contract, full contact information. Like I said earlier, if you have a sensitive situation with your buyers and sellers, let escrow know, because guess what? We're going to be able, when we pick up that phone, we're going to understand, we're going to be in a mindset where, hey, we've got to maybe take a little bit extra time with this client. It's okay to let us know. We're willing to do that. We're happy to do it. Just communicate those type of situations with us. Right off the bat, along with that seller and buyer contact information, we want to get you guys paid, and we got to want to get you guys paid correctly. So give us that commission split as soon as possible. We'll put that in the computer. And so guess what? When you get your commission check, it's not wrong. So help us out with that. Important things to know. If there's a power of attorney needed, please tell us that in advance. If there's somebody out of the area that needs to be executing a notarized document, please tell that to us in advance. It is doable. It might take a little bit long if they're especially in a foreign country, but it can be done. We just need to know in a timely manner so we can get working on it for you. Buyers out of state, not a big deal. The only thing I want to put that out there and make note of is some states are attorney states. So if they're an attorney state, I can't just send any notary to your buyer and seller. That notary has to be an attorney. And as we all know, notaries' schedules are pretty difficult, or I can't get an attorney as easy as I can get a notary public. So let us know if your buyer and seller are in a different state, because we've got to check to make sure that's not an attorney state. Okay. The out of country buyers and sellers must be notarized by a U.S. Embassy or U.S. Consulate notary public. And those appointments can be scheduled online. Just note, they very well could be 30 days out. So again, let us know ahead of time. We'll jump on that for you to get the documents prepared. But it's going to be the buyers and sellers' responsibility to get on that U.S. Consulate Embassy website and get that scheduled. Also, too, is if the property is tenant occupied, what is the intention of the tenants? Are they to be vacated? Is there going to be rents and security deposits prorated and transferred in escrow? So it's very important that we know that stuff. So estoppels and rent agreements are very important. Please send that to us. What happens in escrow process from opening to docs? So basically, we get the contract, the clock starts, we accept the contract, that we're looking for that AMD within the 3 days of the 3 days of the acceptance date. And then when we get the contract, we order the preliminary title report. The preliminary title report will be distributed to all parties, like I said earlier, and it takes anywhere between 3 to 5 business days on a regular track residential property. Commercial is a different time frame. Rural properties are a different time frame. So just keep that in mind when you're opening your escrow and waiting for your preliminary title report. The type of property does determine how quickly that prelim comes back. Payoffs are ordered when the information is given. Let me talk. I know there's a slide later on. I was going to talk about start safe, but never mind. If there's lease solar, we went over this, communicate that. I went over that about getting that transfer started. Then we will create those document packages for the buyers and the sellers to sign. We'll start scheduling those appointments. Typically, if the buyer is obtaining a loan, we will have them execute a majority, not all. We'll have them execute a few things up front, but a majority of those escrow documents will be executed along with the loan documents once it's received from the lender. Setting the commission instructions depending on when we get that commission. If we get it up front, we're going to send those commission instructions out to the realtors as soon as we get it. If we get it later on the transaction, so basically when we get the information, the commission is going to be sent out here shortly. And then accept invoices into escrow per the contract and amendments. I do want to mention that if there's an amendment written after escrow is open, please don't forget to forward that amendment to escrow. 9 times out of 10, we're the forgotten one. And then we do a closing statement and it's not quite accurate because we weren't sent an amendment. So it's best that even if you think you sent it, just send it again just to make sure. And so we have all the information. So we'll get the loan docs in, we'll review them, download them, get them in printable format, and depending on who the lender is, some lenders have half the documents that can be signed e-sign, and then, but they're on every single transaction. If there's a loan, there's going to be paper documents to sign, and then we will work up the file, which we call it figure, make sure all the information is in there, all the figures are in there, and then we look for typically you should be receiving a buyer's estimate and seller's estimate to you as an agent before the buyer and seller signs to make sure that we're not missing anything. Like, hey, oh, termite's not on there. Did I send them the termite bill? So again, we're human, but we're sending that closing statement to you saying, hey, we're going to get ready to sign your buyer or your seller. Take a look at this. Does it look good? So we don't want any surprises. And then we're going to arrange for the signing of your seller to sign your estimate and CD, or your buyers to sign the loan docs and estimated closing statement and any trailing escrow documents. And then once all that comes back, we're going to review everything, make sure everything was signed appropriately. For sellers, we're going to make sure that they filled out the tax documents appropriately to make sure that whether they're exempt from withholding or not. Another can of worms. Happy to go over that with you. Take notes of what you want me to go over later on with you. And then once everything has been checked in, scanned in, sent to the lender, and everything is all signed and we have complete signatures, we're going to prepare to close. Okay. So at that point, the lender is going to contact us and say, hey, we got your loan documents, everything looks good. Here's the following items that we need from you to go ahead and fund your loan. And there could be anywhere between like a letter of explanation or just a seller sign docs. It's a list, and about 80% of the lists escrow can complete. There's going to be some few things that maybe we need to get from the agents or the mortgage broker or the buyer and the seller, but for the most part, we're going to be able to complete without asking about 80% of the typical funding list. And so if there's any kind of questions from the lenders, if besides title and escrow portion, we won't be answering those questions. We act upon instruction. So we're going to reach out to all parties that pertain to that question and make sure that that gets addressed if the lender has a question. So if everything is satisfied and the lender has fulfilled all of their funding condition requirements, the funder will then issue us funding figures and make sure that we balance. And at that time, we're going to say yes, no, maybe so. And so we'll perfect the lender portion of that of the file, and we'll say yes, we balance, and then they're going to go ahead and agree to send that wire. When you hear from your loan officer saying the loan has funded, please don't think that we have the money, because we don't. That means that that funder said, I'm good. I'm sending this to their wire department to send that wire out. There is a time frame from the time that it's funded till we get the money. And then from when we get the money, we have to tell title we're ready to record. And then they have to date down the property. And then it goes to our recording desk and e-recording to actually get recorded. The time that the lender sends the money to us till the time we get it, it's got to go through the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve checks out that wire, make sure there's no, they do anti-terrorism type situation check. And then if it's all good and copacetic, then they release that wire to our bank. Our bank says, hey, we have your money, we're good to go. So funded is great news, but just know that there is a process, and there's something called OFAC, that whole terrorism thing. If any names in that wire matches just remotely, they will hold that wire anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. Not trying to scare you, just trying to keep you educated about what happens. So if all that goes through and we're good to go, we get the wire, we tell title we're good to go. They date it down. They don't pick anything up. They release the file with the title recording desk, and it sits in the e-recording portal of Fresno County Recorder or whatever county you're working with. And we just wait. And depending on the time of the month or the time of the day, we can get recording confirmation, within a half an hour, but it could go as far as a few hours. So just know that it just depends. There are counties that take a little bit longer, but if it gets kicked out, we will fix the problem and resubmit it if we have enough time. We record all day, every day in Fresno County from 8 to, we have until 3:30, but that's all it all depends on the volume for that county. Okay. Then we get an email, all good, we're on record. We will get that email from that recording e-portal, and then we will turn around and send an we're on record email to all parties. And then you can let your clients know, yay, you sold the house, you bought a house. So, but that will come in an email. Some units communicate differently. I like to text recording confirmation and email. So it depends on the unit you work with. If you like to receive your recording confirmation a certain way, go ahead and let them know. We're happy over here at Chicago Title to help you run your business the way you like to. Okay. Now where's my check? Prior to dispersing, the file is balanced. So when I said that the lender portion were balanced, I have to balance the file after I get the recording fees from the county. Sometimes we estimate the calculations, but sometimes it doesn't come out that way because the county has certain pricing for a certain document, and we submit that document and they price it out differently. So we always have to make sure that we input the recording costs and balance out the file and make sure that we have all of invoices and that and so we basically review the entire file at this time. We go over the prelim once more, we go over the contract once more, we go over all the invoices that we received throughout the transaction. And so it takes a little bit. So as much as we want to get you guys paid ASAP, we want to make sure it's right. So this is what happens once we are on record. We literally go through the file in its entirety to make sure all our numbers are correct, because we don't want to call after close of escrow and have to call for money. Can you bring in this money? Can you bring in that? So we don't want to do that. So we just want a little bit of time to be able to do these type of things for you and your client. So when you get your check, you're not looking back, okay? Any questions?
At this point, you're welcome to unmute yourself and just ask a quick question.
Hi, this is Harpreet.
Hi.
So I have a question that if the earnest money deposit is not deposited and the buyer wants to wait for the appraisal to come first, can we still wait or not?
That would have to be something that you discuss with the listing agent and the seller, that they would have to be in agreement to do that, because per the contract, it states that we must have that earnest money deposit in escrow within 3 days of acceptance. So I have seen that there has been language written within the contract to override and supersede that requirement, saying that, you know, in your case, it would have to be written that upon receipt of appraisal, EMD will be deposited to escrow at that time. So it is possible, but it has to be discussed beforehand. It can't be something that's after the fact, after the acceptance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for all of this information. It definitely solidified some things and learned some new things. Where will the recording be available, please?
The recording,
Yes.
usually, if all goes well, we're able to get that converted and out to you this afternoon.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it'll be sent out via email?
Yes, what we do is convert it out of this recording, upload it to YouTube, because we found that that's the easiest way to share, and then we'll send the link to you via email, and you can watch on YouTube at your convenience.
Excellent. I appreciate that, and thank you very much for putting on this training.
Of course, of course. And then we have just a couple little, thank you, Anna, fabulous job. I know people got a ton out of this. And of course, the sales team has all of the supporting information that Anna mentioned, and Anna herself is happy to share. Before we conclude, just wanted to let you know that with the low inventory situation that our market is experiencing, your Chicago Title sales team is here to help with that as well. And so just going to turn it over to Linda Federico Johnson for a moment, just to share that we're here to help.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, we are. We've had so many conversations recently of we need more listings, we need more listings, we need more listings. Well, we've got lots of ways for you to go get those. So the first flyer that she has there is our Chicago Title Premier Services. Now, what that site is basically property information anywhere in the nation, because we're nationwide. So you can get anything you want on a property anywhere in the nation. which also has hyperlinks to the documents. So before you go on a listing, you can print a profile with the deed. So you're talking to the right person when you get there. So that system itself is the starting point to a few other systems. So the next one that I'm going to talk about is our, let me go back for a second, is the premium leads inside of that section. So premium leads, and the reason they're called premium leads is because you have to pay a little bit for them. They're only 6 cents a lead, but you can do some really unique stuff. And this is good for lenders too. I have lenders that use this all the time who want to refinance people at a higher interest rate that they're on and get them in a lower interest rate if they have some equity to play around with. So we can run all kinds of searches like that. My favorite search in there right now, because of Prop 19, which allows you to take your tax basis with you wherever you go in California, is the 2-story homes, age 55 and older, in a particular, you can run it by zip code, however you want, and get them with equity, because people may not realize that if they have a 2-story house and their master bedroom is upstairs, that they can actually take their tax bracket and go somewhere else and get out of that big house that the kids don't live in anymore with them and downsize. If they're even older than that, maybe they move into a retirement home, but you'll get that listing to move them in there, or move them to a smaller place. Now you're getting a listing and a sale. So that's the premium lead section inside there. The next product to get you to farm that I would talk about is our Active Farm product. It's our new favorite thing that came out right at the beginning of COVID. Right now, we are the only title company that has this, and there's only one other title company that will have the option to get it. And this is Active Farm, and this is really a live farm. So you can do things like draw a radius around your listing and 100 homes, quarter mile, whatever you want to do, or you can draw a large farm in there and then work the farm inside the farm. So, and it stays live. So anytime there's a change in there, your farm is updated. You never have to worry about mailing to the wrong person. It's going to be updated for you all the time. So if you have a larger farm, or you are just working your radius, you can send absentee owners one thing and owner occupied the other thing. So you are no longer just mailing it out by just calling somebody's customer service or somebody just giving you labels that you may not need. And then there is options in there. So get with one of us and learn all about that product. It is amazing. And then what that product does is now go mobile. So we've always had our walking farm app that you can see on the screen, and you can walk an area and look at the owner while you're swiping as you go. But these two talk to each other. So whatever you do in Active Farm appears in your walking farm, and whatever you do in walking farm appears in your Active Farm. So if you take notes anywhere, they are in there forever. They go back and forth, they stay with you. So if you're walking and somebody says, oh yeah, add me to your email list, you bam, put their email in and add a note into their email list. And then you can come back and that note is inside your big Active Farm on your desktop. And the last one I'll talk about is Prospect Now. Prospect Now is an amazing platform. You do pay a monthly fee for, but you can get like 500 or 600 leads in a county every month. You can work those leads from who's most likely to sell. It's got like 150-point algorithm built in, and you can truly go by a green, yellow, red system by running an area, and most likely to sell is going to appear at the top, and it's going to go down in the ranking of how they go. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to your reps. We are happy to do it. That's what we do all day long. We Zoom all day. We love it. And just let us know. If you have any questions, holler. If anybody else wants to chime in as a rep, if I missed something, let me know.
No, that was great. So, and of course, one of the things about our market is that the prices seem to be going up daily. So what better than having a flexible closing cost and net sheet app that lets you on the fly when you're meeting with your clients, give them some accurate ideas of the prices that they're thinking of for listing or purchasing. So Robin, could you share just a little bit about this?
Sure. If you have our Chicago Agent One app already, you may or may not know that they've done a ton of upgrades to it. And if you haven't gone in lately, go in and upgrade your Chicago Agent One app. They've added what's called home link to it. So on your buyer side and on your seller side, you now can pull an address in. And when you do that, it's going to give you the property taxes automatically, and it's going to give you what they owe. So when you do a seller's net sheet, it's going to tell you, it's going to give you a much more, on the seller side, it's going to give you a much more detailed net sheet. So it's going to tell you their taxes and then what they owe on it. So basically, when you go in on your net sheet, you will really only have to put in the address, the sales price, and then you don't even have to put a closing date in. You just hit your compute button and you're done. You're all done, and you can send it to them, unless you have other fees and stuff that you need to put in. On the buyer side, same thing, your address, and then what type of loan you need to put in. So they also have added, and I don't have it to show you here, but they have all kinds of social media things that they've added. It's so cool. So if you are new to social media and you don't know anything about it, but you want to learn about adding social media, it's only like $9.99 a year, and any one of your sales executives can go over it with you. They pretty much tell you, okay, this is what you should post on Facebook. This is what you should post on Instagram, and you can just post it. And you don't really have to post a lot. You can post once a week, and all of us can help you via Zoom, show you how to use it, and it's very cool. We're super excited. They've got videos, they've got something to post on Instagram and Facebook. It's already sized, and it's going to have your picture and your company logo, and it's going to make you look amazing. And it's going to be another way for you to engage with your customers. So if you have any questions, reach out to us, and we are happy to go over that with you.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was great. So this is the contact information for everybody on our sales team. If you don't have your sales exec's info handy, at that point, that's all that we have to share with you today. We have so many other products and services that you can utilize to help grow your business, and your sales team can tell you all about them. But hopefully this gave you that insider blueprint on how to successfully close those next transactions. And we're here to help if you have any questions or need any additional info. So with that, I'll stop sharing so that we can say goodbye and thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.